The natural sciences appear to tell us about the ultimate essence of things and are frequently regarded to have supplemented metaphysics as the study of reality's underlying structure. From the internal structure of atoms to the life cycles of stars, modern science appears to provide us with a precise and coherent picture of reality that describes the composition of things and the laws that they obey. Modern genetics and brain science even appear to provide the possibility of a physical science of humans and their behavior. Many of the current scientific things, such as viruses, atoms, black holes, and most kinds of electromagnetic radiation, are unobservable, at least with the untrained senses. Scientific realism is a philosophical position that asserts that scientific theories and the entities they postulate, such as atoms, electrons, or black holes, provide a true or approximately true description of the world, including aspects they may not be directly observable. In other words, scientific realists believe that the claims made by scientific theories should be understood as making genuine statements about the external world. However, it's important to note that scientific realism is not without its critics. Some philosophers advocate for alternative positions, such as instrumentalism, which holds that scientific theories are valuable only for their predictive and explanatory power without necessarily making claims about the reality of unobservable entities. Scientific realism remains a significant topic of debate within the philosophy of science, and it has implications for how we understand the relationship between scientific theories and the external world. Appearance and reality is a philosophical concept that deals with the distinction between how things appear or seem to us and how they actually are in objective reality. This idea has been explored by various philosophers throughout history and is central to epistemology. The physicist Arthur Eddington makes the distinction between appearance and reality conspicuous with his famous discussion. Eddington differentiates the world of common sense and the world of science. The scientific explanation implies that common sense reality is an illusion, or that we don't perceive the world to be anything like it is in some ways. Physics got increasingly abstract and detached from ordinary sense during the 20th century. Relativity theory and quantum mechanics, in particular, distance scientific understanding of space and time and the nature of matter from daily experience. Two types of property used by many of the great thinkers who pioneered the modern scientific outlook, namely primary and secondary properties. To put it simply, primary attributes are those that things have not only appeared to have, but also have in fact. Secondary characteristics are those that things appear to have but do not have in reality, only in the mind of the observer. There are numerous justifications or distinguishing between the traits that things truly possess and those that they only appear to possess. So, Eddington's scientific bears the primary features that scientific theories measure and describe, whereas the ordinary also bears the secondary properties of our everyday experience. Secondary qualities of the commonplace table are reducible to basic characteristics of the scientific table in the sense that they are powers of dispositions to generate specific outcomes in humans under the right conditions.
Now we're gonna talk about the metaphysics of the external world. The debate about scientific realism is closely related to the general issue of our knowledge of the external world. Metaphysical realism itself is a philosophical position that asserts the existence of objective reality independent of our thoughts, beliefs, or perceptions. Mind independence is a crucial aspect of metaphysical realism. It underscores the belief that the reality being referred to in metaphysical realism is indeed independent of our consciousness, thoughts, or interpretations. There are 2 points that we are going to discuss here. The first one is realism and idealism. It seems that our knowledge of the world comes from our sense. I perceive the table in front of me by seeing and touching it, and I know it is there. The simplest view to take about the world and our perception of it is called direct realism. So, direct realism is that there are external objects that exist independently of our minds and which we directly perceive with the sense. In other words, direct realism is the idea that we as humans directly perceive the world as it is. Whatever we perceive in our minds is exactly the external world that exists. There is no differences. However, science has proven that an object our mind perceives is not what it looks like in the external world. For example, we see objects look different at different angles or distances. The building down the road looks very big up close, but very small when I'm far away. If the direct realist claims that we perceive the world directly as the world it is, then what size is the building? How should it look? What is the correct size I should perceive it as? Another famous argument to show that the direct objects of perception are not the external objects is the argument from illusion. Take the case of a straight stick, which appears a bend when standing in a transparent container of water. The stick itself is not bent, yet the stick we see is bent. Therefore, what we see is not the real stick, but an image of idea of it. These and other arguments that appeal to cases of perceptual error, dreams, and hallucinations may be taken to show that the sense do not give us direct knowledge of the objects. Then, there is the term idealism. Idealism is that we do not directly perceive external objects, but rather our mind's own ideas or representations of the world. The mind is not directly aware of objects in the world at all, but rather of what they call ideas and impressions. Idealism contradicts direct realism, but not the parts of the latter that say that there are external objects. Idealism is a thesis about the nature of perception, not a metaphysical thesis about what exists. Hence, idealism is compatible with metaphysical realism. If idealism is right and we perceive only our own impressions and ideas, then what is the relationship between objects in the world and the impressions I have of them? The obvious answer is that my impressions are caused by external objects. There's the term indirect or causal realism, which is contrasted with direct realism. Causal realism is that there are external objects that exist independently of our minds and which cause our indirect perception of them via the senses. For example, when we look at this carrot, I immediately perceive the sense of data of the physical carrots that is creating in me, the various sensations of color and texture, taste, and smell. However, in causal realism, humans never perceive the world directly, so how can we ever be sure that what we are perceiving is correct and is not an illusion or hallucination? How can we ever be sure that all people are perceiving the same thing or have the same sense of data experience? Next, we move to the second point of this subchapter, idealism. Idealism is an argument that there is no external world, rather reality is just a series of mental ideas. It is the rejection of matter. There is no mind-independent reality, rather if everything is dependent on the mind to exist. All the objects we see, everything that exists is just ideas in our mind. There is no physical world outside of our minds. Something only exists if there is a mind there to perceive it. Nothing exists outside the mind. But how does idealism count for such continuity? If there is no external world outside our minds, how is it that the same room we walk in every day looks exactly the same? If there is no material world causing our ideas, what keeps our reality in such regularity, such patterns? Purely mental ideas would not need such continuity and regularity.
We comes to the semantics. Semantics it's all about the literal meaning of words. Imagine someone says to you like this, "It's cold in here." Maybe pragmatically, it has some implied meaning. Semantically, we understand the meaning of the words, they are just expressing a feeling of low temperature. Meanwhile, scientific realism in semantics is essentially the belief that the scientific understanding of language and meaning provide us with genuine insights into the way language works. It indicates that scientifically developed theories of language are close to or capture the real nature of meaning. Now, let's talk about logical positivism. This was a popular movement that tried to change philosophy by stressing how important it is to use evidence and reasoning to figure out what statements meant. The verification principle was the core of the logical positivism. It said that a statement only had value if it could be empirically verified or was analytically true. As the foundationalism asserts, verifiable or analytically true statements serve as the secure foundation upon which all meaningful knowledge can be built. This meant that claims that were metaphysical or couldn't be seen or couldn't be proven didn't have any value. The movement wanted to get rid of what its proponents considered the nebulous and unproductive debates of traditional metaphysics and replace them with a more scientific, rigorous approach to language and philosophy. So, let me tell you or explain to you the terms of empirically verified or was analytically true. Empirically verified refers to the statements or claims that can be tested and confirmed through observation or experimentation. For example, if someone says water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level, this statement is empirically verifiable. Why? Because you can conduct experiments, measure the temperatures, and observe the boiling point of water to confirm or refute the claim. Meanwhile, analytically true refers to statements that are true by definition, and their truths can be discerned through the analysis of language or concepts. For example, a triangle has 3 sides. This statement is analytically true. Why? Because the concept of triangle includes the idea of having 3 sides. It's a fundamental characteristic of what we mean the term triangle. You don't need to measure triangles in the real world to confirm this. The truth is inherent in the definition of a triangle. Let us move to semantic instrumentalism. Semantic instrumentalism is the theoretical terms of scientific theories that should not be taken literally as referring to unobservable entities, because they are merely logical constructs used as tools for systemizing relationship between phenomena. Theoretical hypotheses are not esoteric. In simple terms, semantic instrumentalism suggests that scientific terms are tools or logical constructs for understanding relationships between observable phenomena, and we should not take them too literally as descriptions of hidden, unobservable entities. Theoretical ideas are more like useful hypotheses, not absolute assertions. So when scientists talk about things we cannot see, like atoms or dark matter, don't think they are describing invisible stuff exactly. These are more like smart tools or ideas to help make sense of what we observe. Meanwhile, reductive empiricism is a theoretical term that can be defined in terms of observational concepts. Hence, statements involving them are esoteric. Scientific theories should not be taken literally as referring to unobservable objects. Reductive empiricism says that scientific terms should be explained in terms of what we can observe, making statements more believable. It also suggests that when scientific talk about things we cannot see, it's more like a handy way of explaining what we observe, rather than claiming they are invisible entities lurking around. For example, If a scientist says there is a force called gravity, they mean it's a way of describing what we feel when we drop something, not just some invisible force we cannot understand. Reductive empiricism is like saying scientists want to link every idea to something we can experience or observe. It's all about making scientific talk connect to the things we can directly know. So the difference is, semantic instrumentalism says scientific terms are tools for understanding, not precise descriptions. Reductive empiricism insists every idea should link back to things we can directly experience. Now we move to the theory of truth. There are three theories of truth. The first one is correspondence theory of truth. The idea is truth is seen as a correspondence between a statement or belief and the actual state of affairs in the world. For example, if I say, the cat is on the sofa, the statement is considered true if, in reality, there is indeed a cat on the sofa. The second one is coherent theory of truth. Truth is determined by the internal consistency and the coherence of a set of beliefs or statements. For example, imagine if I have a set of beliefs that all mammals have fur and whales are mammals. According to the coherent theory of truth, these beliefs are true. Why? Because they cohere or fit together logically. The third one is pragmatic theory of truth. Truth is viewed in the terms of practical consequences of believing or asserting a statement. For example, if someone asks for direction and I say, turn left to find the store, the truth of my statement is based on whether turning left leads them to the store. The practical consequences determines the truth.
Okay, now I will explain about the standard scientific realism. So, standard scientific realism, often referred to simply as scientific realism, is a philosophical position about the nature of scientific theories and their relationship to the world. It asserts that scientific theories provide approximately true descriptions of the world, and scientific entities postulated by these theories, such as electrons, quarks, and black holes, exist and have the properties ascribed to them by those theories. If we incorporate both metaphysical and semantic realism about some subject matter as which could be ethics, mathematics, aesthetic, or theoretical science, among others, and add an epistemic requirement, we get a strong form of realism about S. The first requirement is the entities or kinds of entities talked about and or described by discourse about S is exist, and then their existence is independent of our knowledge and minds. These are the metaphysical requirements. And then the third is statements about S are irreducible or ineliminable and are genuinely assertoric expressions. And third condition for statements of S are objective and determine the truth or falsity of those statements depending on how they stand in the world. These semantics requirements are carried out in terms of a correspondence theory of truth as opposed to a pragmatic or a coherence theory of truth. And then the last is truths about S are knowable and we do in fact know some of them, and hence the terms of S successfully refer to things in the world. If we take S to be science, for example, if we are considering electron theory, then scientific realism says that first, electron exists and it is in our mind independently, and then the statement about electrons are really about subatomic entities with negative charge, spin 1/2. A certain mass, and so on. And then these statements are true or false depending on how the world is. Then the last is we should believe electron theory, and much of it counts as knowledge. So, these are the strong form of standard scientific theory of electron. In summary, standard scientific realism is a philosophical stance that asserts that scientific theories provide approximately true descriptions of the world, and that the entities postulated by these theories exist as described. Okay, now I will explain about the anti-realism. Okay, anti-realism is a philosophical stance that stands in contrast to scientific realism. It suggests that scientific theories should not be interpreted as providing true or approximately true descriptions of the world. Anti-realists argue that scientific theories may be useful for making predictions and organizing empirical data, but they need not reflect the actual nature of reality. Instead, they see scientific theories as human constructs that are shaped by our observations, theories, and conceptual frameworks. In essence, anti-realism questions the notion that science uncovers an objective reality and emphasizes the pragmatic or conventional nature of scientific knowledge. At its core, anti-realism rejects the idea that there is an objective, mind-independent reality or truth. Instead, anti-realists often argue that truth, meaning, or reality are dependent on human thoughts, language, or perception. Here are some common types of anti-realist theories. The first is scientific anti-realism. Scientific anti-realism, often associated with philosophers like Bess van Freysen, argues that we should not take scientific theories to be true representation of an objective reality. Instead, scientific theories are seen as tools for making predictions and explaining phenomena, but they need not correspond to an underlying reality. The second is epistemic anti-realism. Epistemic anti-realism pertains to our beliefs and knowledge. One form of epistemic anti-realism is skepticism, which questions the possibility of having certain knowledge about the external world. Another form is instrumentalism, which argues that beliefs are a tool for predicting and explaining our experiences, rather than accurate representations of an objective reality. The third is semantic anti-realism. Semantic anti-realism focuses on the nature of meaning and truth. The most well-known form of semantic anti-realism is the deflationary theory of truth, which suggests that truth is a trivial concept and that sentences like snow is white are true simply because snow is white. In other words, truth doesn't carry any deep metaphysical or correspondent significance. The next is moral anti-realism. In ethics, moral anti-realism denies the existence of objective moral facts or values. Instead, it contends that moral claims are expressions of individual or societal preferences, emotions, or conventions. Various forms of moral anti-realism include moral relativism, moral subjectivism, and error theory. For example, if someone says stealing is wrong, a moral subjective might interpret this as a statement about the speaker's personal dislike of stealing, rather than a claim about an objective moral truth. The next is mathematical anti-realism. Some philosophers, such as fictionalists, argue that mathematical objects and truth do not exist in an objective, mind-independent sense. Instead, they treat mathematics as a useful fiction or language game for describing certain aspects of the world. So, anti-realism should be contrasted with realism, which posits that there is a mind-independent reality that exists independently of human thoughts, language, or perception. The debate between realists and anti-realists is a central theme in various philosophical discussions. and the choice between these positions often depends on the domain of inquiry and the specific philosophical problems being addressed.